I'm happy that you are giving us your association today. You agreed to come and speak with us on this latest topic on which you have invested so much of your time, Code of Ethical Behavior. And on behalf of the whole Iscon Naperville congregation, I just wanted to express my heartfelt gratitude to you. We are very, very happy to have you here. With your permission, I will just give a very few brief biography here. So, devotees, Yogesvara Prabhu is very well known to us. He came here a few years back, and I'm sure you all remember. Prabhu's, he had his, let me just see here. Prabhu was initiated by Srila Prabhupada in 1970 in London. And there he recorded with the London Temple on George Harrison's Radha Krishna Temple album. Yogesvara Prabhu received his Brahminical initiation in 1972. And during 13 years of temple life, he traveled with Srila Prabhupada across Europe as his French language translator, served as temple president in Paris, and later in Philadelphia. Director of Iscon's French publishing office, editor of Back to Godhead magazine, founder of Bala Books children's publishing office. Currently, he is also serving as a mediator for Iscon Resolve. Yogesvara Prabhu earned his master's degree in religious studies at Hofstra University, where he taught Holocaust studies and Hinduism from 2003 to 2013. His devotional writings include Here Comes the Sun, The Spiritual and Musical Journey of George Harrison, Gita Wisdom, An Introduction to India's Essential Yoga Text, and Swami in a Strange Land, How Krishna Came to the West, an Iscon authorized biography of Srila Prabhupada. Prabhu is also a documentary filmmaker whose film about Holocaust history are seen on PBS and Discovery. His biographies of Holocaust survivors have sold more than 1.5 million copies worldwide. So on behalf of Iscon Naperville congregation, I wanted to extend a very warm welcome to His Grace Yogesvara Prabhu. Thank you again, Prabhu, for your wonderful association.
Well, thank you, Premananda Prabhu, for your invitation to be back with you again. I checked my notes. The last time I was with you, was December of 2015.
Wow.
So
that's a long time.
Yeah, some of you were very young. Now you're grandparents. Time flies.
Yes.
It's good to be back with you all. Kind of strange doing this by Zoom, but we'll get along somehow. I don't want to take up all of our time, just me prattling on. So what I'll do is speak briefly, and then I want to open it up to discussion. I mean, the most important thing here is what interests you, what concerns you, what you would like to talk about. So I'm wide open here for you. Just to Premananda Prabhu, thank you for that bombastic introduction. I'll try. I can't possibly live up to it, but thank you anyway. I'm speaking with you from my home on Long Island. It's a nice house my wife and I have here. And you see my Gornitai deities in the back there. I like having them in my office because then I get to talk with them, you know. I permit myself to have conversations with my deities. But it can lead to some awkward moments. I mean, earlier today, for example, I was just thinking about having a home and all of these possessions. And so I turned to them, you know, because Gornitai were sannyasis. So I said, I think you guys have the right idea. And then I stopped and I said, okay, I just called God and his brother, you guys. I might want to rethink that. But it's nice having them here and to be able to converse. So I hope they will bless me to offer you something of use this evening. Ostensibly, the subject of our get together is this, called the Iscon Code of Ethical Behavior. This was ratified into law by the GBC about a year ago. And it's essentially a condensed document drawn from GBC resolutions going back to the beginning of the GBC in 1975. And it spells out what are the standards that we can reasonably expect of all Iscon members, whether they be officers of Iscon or congregants, initiated devotees. It has 14 items: Iscon and the law, ethical behavior and the law, ethical behavior in devotee relationships, ethical behavior concerning sexual conduct, personal bias, bullying, finances and administration, philosophical doubts, ethical behavior concerning opposing ideologies, other religions, domestic violence, child abuse and neglect, confidentiality, the environment, and finally, ethical behavior concerning social media. It also has part 2, which is enforcement, how this is, if there are cases where someone is possibly going beyond the expected ethical behavior, what can happen to them. And part 3 is recourse. In other words, if someone feels they've been unjustly accused of having broken the ethical standards, what are their recourses, avenues of recourse? So that's what the code is, and there are copies available on request. It took about 3 years to put this together, and I thought it was important because having grown up in Iscon, I mean, I'm what they call a senior citizen now. Whatever, I don't feel that way, but I am 72, and I was 19 years old. So you do the math here. I've been, what is that, more than a half century in Iscon. So I've kind of seen a lot that's been going on, and many of the challenges that exercised us in that first generation arose because we didn't really know what the ethical standards were. I mean, they're described, they're there in Bhagavad Gita, it's there in Prabhupada's classes and so on. But there was no one place, no one document that said, this is what it means. When Prabhupada says he wanted his sons and daughters, his students, to be gentlemen and gentlewomen, what did he mean by that? What precisely did he expect of us? So now at least we have a document that we can refer to when it comes to ethical standards. Now, why is that important? There's no spiritual advancement without reform of behavior. I mean, if you condense Krishna consciousness down to its essence, it really is becoming mature men and women. That's the fundamental meaning of Krishna consciousness. Yes, the higher standard of developing love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead and achieving, going back to Godhead, these are noble goals, noble ambitions, but we don't really have control over that. I mean, those things are awarded by God when we qualify for them. So the question is, how do we qualify? The starting point is reform of our own behavior. Nothing works properly if we lose sight of the fact that to be a Vaishnav means to have an open heart, to see all others with love and compassion. And when there are differences, when there are challenges in our life, there's a right way and a wrong way to go about that. Now, in my role as a mediator for Iscon Resolve, I have an opportunity to see many such situations up close. Sometimes I'm asked to step in. For example, one mediation I was asked to do was with the GBC and a sannyasi who had been operating outside of Iscon, more or less following his own ideas. He didn't want to be a part of the institution of Iscon. So that was one mediation. Another mediation was with a family where the daughter had become estranged. She didn't like her family. She didn't like her parents. And we had to come together. Now, mediation is an interesting tool for arriving at a reconciliation. It's a system of alternative dispute resolution, which was developed in Scandinavia after World War II, because people were looking for non-violent, non-military ways of resolving their differences. So a mediator is not a lawyer or a judge. A mediator is someone who comes before two people who are in a dispute, or sometimes more, and is trained to listen in such a way that the conversation can move past the hostilities and the roadblocks to a place where perhaps both sides of an issue will see a way out, a mutually agreeable solution. So that's what Iscon Resolve does, in large measure, is undertakes such things. Mediation works on the level of governments. I know someone who was a mediator between the United States and Russia, so between nations or between warring factions. Civil wars between nations inside nations have been resolved by mediators where the traditional channels have not worked. So it's a very powerful tool. So my experience has been over these many years that devotees are human beings like everybody else. And within our temple communities, we pretty much confront the same issues that the rest of society confronts outside of Iscon, which means divorce, separation, tragedies of one kind or another, misbehavior, abuse, and broken hearts and broken families, addictions of different kind, drug addiction, alcohol addiction, sex addiction, many different gambling addiction. And, just because we have an image of Krishna and Radha in Vrindavan, we have this beautiful image of God in his female and male aspects in the eternal realm, it doesn't mean that the traumas of life have somehow automatically been magically resolved. Now we're completely non-neurotic beings. We're perfectly adjusted human beings, and everything's fine, and we're going to live happily ever after. It doesn't work like that. Krishna consciousness is quite practical, and there's an acknowledgement. I can tell you frankly from my time with Srila Prabhupada that he was a very practical person, very, very practical person. And he had a very realistic understanding of the kinds of challenges that people have to confront, trying to become Krishna conscious, trying to be good devotees. Very few people whom I have known over the years have left Krishna consciousness because they had some kind of philosophical problem. It's not about philosophy. When people have difficulty in their spiritual life, it's because there's some emotional difficulty, there's some psychological difficulty, there's some relationship difficulty that they're going through. It might be financial challenges, it might be health challenges. It's pretty much whatever other human beings have to confront. We also confront. We're trying to be devotees, but we have these lives that we have to somehow organize, and it can get very tricky. Especially now, I have to tell you, I remember a time when I was a lad, when I was younger, when this country was a very different place. The United States was not like it is today. It was more predictable. There was much greater social stability, much greater economic stability, health stability. There's strangely right now, we seem to be in some kind of vortex of many, many challenges. So it's a difficult time, even under normal circumstances, to become Krishna conscious, to say nothing of where we are right now historically. So it suggests that now more than ever, we have to be loving of one another, caring of one another, respectful of one another. I can tell you honestly, I would not be here today if it weren't for the caring and loving devotees I met when I first went to the London Temple in December of 1969. There was Mukunda, now he's Mukunda Maharaj, then his wife Janaki, there was Shamsundar and Malati, there was Yamuna of blessed memory, and her then husband Gurudas. George Harrison was there with us at that time. I have to tell you, when I first visited the temple, I was a student at the Sorbonne University in Paris, and it was on a Christmas vacation. I went to London. I had no idea what the philosophy was all about, but these people were so wonderful. They were so good. You know, they had good hearts, and they cared for each other. They were friends, and they brought me in. They made me feel like part of their family. I said, I don't care what their faith is. I want to be a part of this. I want these people in my life. I want this Sangha. I didn't know the word Sangha back then. I want this in my life. That's what we're attempting to do. We're trying to create that kind of an environment for people. Now, sometimes it's difficult, and we have to appreciate that others also go through their challenges in life, and we may not always agree, but it doesn't mean that we have to be inimical. It doesn't mean that we have to be hostile, and it also doesn't mean that we have to be hopeless or in despair. In years gone by, it was more difficult because the mechanisms were not in place. There was no Iscon Child Protection Office. There was no Iscon Resolve mediation agency. There was no code of ethical behavior. You know, it's taken us this first half century just to kind of get it together so that we can care for one another. We can care for our congregants. We can care for our community members. And we're still learning. You know, it's a slow process, unfortunately, because the needs are sometimes urgent, but we're getting there. So I'm delighted that I was invited to come and be with you this evening. And I think maybe the right way to proceed here, let me see, I see there are 33 participants. I think if you use the raise hand function, what do you think? Would that be the way to do it, Premananda Prabhu?
Yes.
Yeah. So if you go to, I think it's under reactions. Yeah. If you go to reactions and use the raise hand gesture, then I'll acknowledge you, and then you can unmute yourself, and please turn on your camera so that I can see you. Kanak Prabhu, you're the first hand that I see. Please unmute yourself and
Prabhu, please accept humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you.
So nice to have your darshan after a long time.
It's been a while.
I
Yeah,
met you.
look at us. We were redheads 7 years. Now look at us.
I met you in
White hair.
Mayapur, Navadvipandal Parikrama a few times, but you don't remember me. But I was the host taking care of the Maharajas and GVCs and all in the Navadvipandal Parikrama time.
It's a pleasure to be back with you again.
I'm just waiting to have your darshan. I'm just waiting.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you.
You look some difference now, not like before. Notice age is gone.
It was going to happen sooner or later.
Yeah. Thank you, Prabhu, so much. Please bless us so that we can serve here with love and devotion and get good association here in Naperville. These congregations are really so nice and so wonderful place to get educated and bring up the children here.
Yeah.
I'm so happy to come down here after so much of struggle there in Utah. Then we came here now, just 2.5 years over now. We are here now.
Good. Well, you're in a good place. You're in a wonderful place there.
Very much comfortable. Everyone is very, very peaceful and comfortable now.
So did you have a question you wanted to ask?
No, it's just how long did you finish the speaking? No.
Yes. This is the time for discussion. If people have questions,
Okay.
can ask their questions, and then we can discuss. So it's good to see you.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a question, I'll move on to the next person. Kumar Prabhu, I see your hand up.
I have only one question.
Oh, yes, yes.
When we become when I become little aggressive, become little tempered, get short temper, you can say. So how do I bring down that coolness? One of the Prabhupada disciples, I think, you've been knowing, his name is Bhagavad Prasad in Mayapur. He told me something, but I want to know from you, how do I come down in that situation?
When you get angry, you say?
Yeah, some anger, some aggressiveness comes.
Well, anger is triggered by something. There's something that made it happen. And the first thing that a reflective, self-reflective person would do is to step back, take a deep breathing is very useful. Yoga breathing, very helpful. Just calm down, calm down. And then you can step back and say, okay, what is it that I'm angry about? So analyze. So go to Sankhya Yoga. Analyze the situation a little bit. Say, what is it that made me angry? Pinpoint, if you can pinpoint specifically what it is. See, what you're doing now by analyzing is you're circumventing the emotional response. The reptilian part of the brain is a very important part of the brain. It's like if a car is coming at you, you don't want to be meditating. I wonder if the driver knows that he's about to kill me. Just get out of the way. So that self-preservation instinct is a very good instinct. But in order to have that instinct working, all kinds of other functions of the brain have to shut down. Reflection, seeking alternative ideas, analysis. You can't do all of that and save yourself at the same time. So the purpose of meditation and yoga, and for us bhakti, is that when we're feeling these emotions rising up, you step back away, and really just taking a deep breath is a very, very healthy way to trigger that. Go, okay, what's going on here? Now you start to analyze, what is it that I'm angry about? And then you can begin to deal with it in a more rational way. So avoid the knee-jerk emotional response. That's the first thing I would suggest.
Good. Yeah, same thing here. But you explain more detail. I'm very happy now. He was telling me like this. As I asked these questions, he said that take out all the breath from your stomach. Like this. And like the 10 times you do, and sit down coolly. Don't talk anything.
Yeah, different ways to do it. It's just basically stepping back away from your own emotional response.
Yeah.
The emotional response is healthy in some ways, because if you are in danger, you need to know that. But it will also shut down these other functions. So you want to give yourself the time to go to that more reflective place. But
Yeah.
good question. Thank you. I'm going to move on, if I may, Prabhu. It is good to see you again.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you. Please
Hare
bless us.
Krishna.
Thank
Kumar,
you.
Prabhu, you're the next hand I see.
Yeah. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
So you might be aware that we are building a temple here in Naperville. We are trying to. So at a lot of times there are differences between the devotees, especially who are at the higher levels, who are doing a lot of, for example, they are doing a lot of work. So what can be the best way to put down our views, or put down our dispute, or put down our differences, so that the person in front of us does not get offended? Means he does not feel that it is towards him, rather it's towards the cause of the towards the greater good of building the temple. So
Very
this
good.
is one.
Very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Prabhu. Yeah,
No,
that's my
very good question. I mean, this is something that comes up frequently. It's not unusual. There are always differences of opinion. There are always some concerns that need to be addressed. And what you're asking me is, how do Vaishnavas handle that? How do devotees on a progressive spiritual path deal with those differences of opinion, or sometimes a conflict or whatever? So that's where mediation comes in, by the way, because it's not always possible. Two people may not have the training. If you have disputants, if you have people who have different perspectives on something, they may not be trained with the skills for knowing how to mediate the differences on their own. And that's when you get into personality conflicts. That's when you get into suspicions and distrust, and all of those negative emotions. So a very useful way is to bring in a mediator, bring in someone who can help essentially sanitize the conversation. A mediator is trained to know how to listen to people and not getting involved in their story, but acknowledging them. And a mediator will set up certain principles, like, now in this discussion, we agree to listen and not interrupt the other person. There are ground rules that are set up. So I'm a big believer, if you just go to isconresolve.com, simplest way to do it, find a mediator to help you negotiate those differences. Now that's on a pragmatic external level. On an internal level, it's a different matter altogether. On an internal level, a reflective devotee, someone who's truly interested in doing the right thing. Now, let me explain something, if I may. Being right is not the same thing as doing the right thing. We're not looking to be right. We're looking to do the right thing. Very big difference. You may know that you have a position on something and you're absolutely right about it. It doesn't matter. You can be right as rain and still make the situation worse by insisting how right you are. Mature negotiations take place between individuals who recognize that it is the manner with which the conversation is being conducted with utmost respect and utmost sense of collegiality that is the important thing. It could be, first of all, that you're wrong and you just don't know it, in which case you're insisting on something and you're just making things worse. Or it could be that you're right, but you're not 100% right. And maybe the other person has something valuable to say. Why not be open-minded enough to listen to what someone has to say But that takes real maturity. You know, we're complicated creatures, we humans. And very often, what we're dealing with is not the issue that seems to be the issue on the surface. It's something deeper. I don't want to pretend to be a pop psychologist here or something, but very often when there's an argument between people, there's something on an unconscious level that's coming out. Some anger toward a parent, some anger toward oneself, you know, that this is just reminding me of how bad a devotee there people want to be good devotees, and sometimes if they have habits that are impeding them from becoming good devotees, they're angry at themselves. But how do you fight yourself? So you want to take that out on somebody else. Maybe it's somebody else has to be to blame for my situation. So it's a little complicated sometimes. And if we're aware of that, then if we acknowledge that we're not resolving this on our own, we're not able to do that, then get help. Bring someone in who is an experienced mediator who can help resolve that. It's not rocket science. It can be done. It can be done. It just needs to be motivated by both sides wanting to come to a conclusion, a mutually agreeable conclusion. So we don't have time to go into much more detail about it here, but if you look at the isconresolve.com website, you'll find more information about it, and I think you'll find it very useful. So thank you,
Prabhu.
Thank you,
Thank you, Prabhu.
Vamsi Dari Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Please accept my humble obeisances.
Please accept
Untitled
my-
Chapter, Prabhupada.
Hare Prabhupada.
Actually, many things are reeling in my mind. First thing is, I'm not sure this is the right forum, so I want to ask, kindly excuse me if it is not appropriate. But I'm thinking like I'm getting into the hot topic. Just the system of leader and follower in Iscon. As a follower, it always feels like a small child, not sure what I'm going, and always thinking like there is a better way, or like I'm being pushed, suppressed, and so on. I also personally acknowledge that it's also part of my own struggle I need to address also. But that at times feel like, where am I? Like I came here to Iscon for Krishna consciousness, or better life, or something like that. And then like when it is put down by superior, then it is like the child with where am I to go? It feels like that to me. And the other part is also that yeah, maybe I will hold myself here, Prabhu, and just want to hear from you.
I want to make sure I understand what you're asking about. You're saying sometimes as a follower, you feel almost like a child, and if the leaders of the community are harsh toward you, then you feel bad about that. Am I understanding correctly?
Like for a child, the systems and processes looks to be like for a child, everything the parent does, or like someone or someone with superior does, is like, why is he doing like that? Like I'm asked to go to school, I don't want to go to school, or I'm asked to do something, I don't want to do it. So that's one part of it. And
I'm still not sure I understand your question. Can you consolidate your question? Can you make your question more concise for me?
Maybe like I'll come back, Prabhu, maybe. maybe.
Okay, I'm happy to discuss it with you. I just want to make sure I'm addressing the right thing. So
Sure,
I
Prabhu.
think it has something to do with feeling some friction, maybe with leadership or I'm
Yeah,
not quite sure.
sure.
So
With,
if you can help me to better understand, I'd be happy to talk with you about it.
yeah, it's a friction with leadership. It always feels like the. I mean, I don't want to say leader and follower again here, because the follower is not voluntarily following the leader. Just the power, the person in power is pressing the power on the junior, the junior or follower. So I'm confused with the culture in this with this culture in Iscon, where we are coming for.
Okay, well that helps me to understand it a little bit better. I'll try to address it as best I can, and if I'm not 100% on the mark, I hope you'll forgive me. You know, we may be 50, whatever, 7 years old or something, but ISKCON is still a work in progress. It's still very, very young. Temple communities are still recovering from many of them, from mistakes that were made in the past. Very often, leadership falls to people who are willing to assume the responsibilities, and it's a great burden on them because there are always so many things. I mean, just become a temple president and be prepared for the worst. You have to wear so many hats and do so many things, and if sometimes tempers run short, I mean that's excusable. That can be understood. It's specific to the situation, so I'm not able to really give you a very accurate answer. What I can tell you from my own experience is that the most effective communications I've seen in temples take place when there is a very, very open heart. When the temple administrators, the congregation, the devotees, and so on, when there's a willingness to speak from the heart, which means taking risks. Speaking from your heart means taking risks. You're exposing yourself. This is how I'm feeling. This is my concerns. And good leadership will hear that. Sometimes leaders have to be tough because there's so much that they have to get done that they're responsible for, and they may feel that they have to take things in hand. You can't always be wishy-washy or soft and expect things to get done. Sometimes it's necessary to take a hard line. But a mature leader is one who is willing to listen to criticism, listen to concerns, and there's a willingness on both sides to speak quite openly. Now, again, it doesn't always happen like that. But the strongest communities are the ones who try. At least there has to be an effort to try. The worst thing you can do is go and hide. That's the worst thing you can do. The worst thing is to say, I can't deal with this. I'm going away. If everybody did that, there would be no community anymore. Everybody has something that they have on their mind. The strongest communities are the ones where, even though it's difficult, there's a willingness to sit down. We used to call them in the early days Ishtagoshti. We used to have every week, usually I think it was on a Sunday before the Sunday feast, if I remember. Once a week, everyone would come together and we'd sit down and we would discuss. Now, it wasn't always, grievances. Very often the discussions were about philosophy or something that we didn't understand from Bhagavad Gita or whatever. But it was also an opportunity to talk about the community, the health of the community, the progress of the community. That needs to be fostered. So that's as good an answer as I can give you, given the short time that we have together.
Yeah, sure, Prabhu. So the things I'm learning is that in the system there is limitations in it, that but that's the what we have to work with it. And
We're
the
in this
primary,
as, look, you know, family members fight all the time, but they don't hate
yeah.
each other.
Mm,
You know, family, there's always, oh, Uncle so and so, what an idiot, you know. but he's still my uncle and I love him, right? It's kind of like that.
yeah.
You know, we're family. We're spiritual family. So I can, you know, be miffed about you, or you can be miffed about me, but at the end of the day, I love you. I love you.
It's
We're
the fact.
family, and we'll figure something out. That's a healthy community right there. All right, thank you,
Sure.
Prabhu. I hope that's of some
Yes.
assistance.
Yes.
Kiran, Prabhu, I see your hand up.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji, for helping us out with information on, ethics and the discussion you've been doing. The question I have is, now that we are at a point, building our new temple and kind of growing as a community, when you're talking about this mediator, what would you recommend for us as a congregation to set something right at this stage, before we even go into the bigger, like a bigger part of the temple or bigger congregation? How would you suggest that we address this as a Naperville congregation? Like, what setup do we need?
Very, very good. Thank you for that question. Just as you pay an architect to create a plan for the physical strength of your temple building, so you also must take time to create the psychic architecture of your community. There needs to be attention given to the infrastructure, the social infrastructure. And that's also a new dimension. That's not something that we've ever really looked at historically in Iscon, but we're coming to the point of recognizing that it's as important to bring in someone with social skills, with communication skills, with psychological skills, someone coming in with organizational skills, to spell out what the challenges are and what some ways of anticipating what a healthy infrastructure will look like. Now, I can't just give you all of the information about it, how to do it, because I honestly don't have a list of everyone who's capable of doing that. What I can tell you is that where my son lives in Alachua, they're setting up many different kinds of community initiatives where the community is brought together to discuss as a group what are the things that are most important to us. For example, in Alachua, they had, I think, 150 people, 200, 300. It was big meetings. And they went through exercises to decide what are the 5 most important things, in your opinion, that we as a community must address. It was fascinating. They came up with childcare, elder care, insurance. I mean, things that traditionally have not necessarily been given as much attention. When you think about building a temple, you don't think necessarily about how you're going to handle the child care and the health insurance. You think about building a building, right? All right, we want ingress and egress, and we want to be able to feed 20,000 people, and we want to have this for the deities, and that's the external, but there's the internal as well. You can have a very modest building as a temple, and if the hospitality is warm and loving, you'll build a community just as fast as if you have a very big building. So I would urge that there is some attention given to how to build that internal emotional structure, just like you're giving attention to building the external physical structure as well. You're muted. I can't hear.
Thank you, Prabhuji. That was really good. So, like, I think if we take examples of the communities, like you mentioned some very good points, like Alachua had this discussion, and I think it would be very nice if we can establish something at our level here in the congregation with someone's guidance.
Yeah.
I think we need that. This is a great community, but we are lacking like someone to mediate or someone to really guide these things within the community.
Yeah. You can
I don't have an
contact,
answer.
my son was an important organizer for some of these programs. By the way, in Alachua, they've instituted other programs as well. 10-step programs for alcoholism, family counseling, different kinds of addictions. I mean, this is the next level down, obviously, or up, I guess, in terms of community care, pastoral care. These things take very careful planning, but it just begins with taking some initial steps. So, and there are devotees who travel to temple communities to help bring these things to life. So if you send me an email, I'll try to send you some contacts, and or if you talk with the temple organizers, I don't want to interfere with that line of communication, but there are people who will help.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much for your question.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I'm not raising my hand. I don't know how to raise my hands. This is Premananda. So we are in the very early stages of setting up committees here in our temple. Now we have about 21 different committees, and one of them is devotee care. And under the devotee care, we have this pastoral care, counseling, then
Wonderful.
empathy communication, and domestic abuse, and caring for single families, like that, about 5-6 different, and healthcare. All of that is listed there. And right now we are forming the teams. And what Kiran just mentioned is one aspect of that, which is the conflict resolution. Mm-hmm. And this is coming under devotee care. And so
that's wonderful. You're ahead of the game. That's fantastic.
Yes. So once that is the structure is set up, and then each committee will have their own chairman, and they will have these different departments. Actually, there are devotees who went and got trained in various areas. Of course, conflict resolution is an area which needs further training, but other areas we do have devotees who are already trained. And so the plan is once it is set up, then that department will have discussions among themselves, and at that point of time, whoever is the chairperson can reach out to the right resource and train the right kind of people with the right.
That's wonderful. That's fantastic news, and it puts you ahead of the curve in terms of community development. So I'm sure that will be made known, if it's not already been made known to the community, what the different groups are that you've organized there.
Yes, we're just working on that. Everybody knows that.
Okay, thank you. Mohan Leela Prabhu, you have a hand up?
Yes, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Oh, sorry, that's my work thing. Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you very much for this. I was actually fortunate to get a copy of this Code of Ethical Behavior, and it's really wonderful. I'm just curious on what kind of resources are available for us as a community to understand this and put into practice. You know, are there courses available, or is it meant for self-study? I'm just curious, Prabhuji.
Well, that's one of the three questions that I hope no one's going to ask me in these programs. And I'm not going to tell you what the other two questions are. Well, the answer is it's very early on. You know, the code is, it's not an office. It's not an agency. It's a document.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a starting point. And if you look at the inside back page, right there, what it says is to submit a request for help with an ethical dilemma, please email isconresolve@gmail.com. So that's as far as it's gone right now. We don't have a staff. We don't have funding. The idea was to get something started so that everyone would be able to have a point of reference. That's all that we've done really so far. So the answer to your question at the moment is that there aren't other resources within the ethical code itself, but within the movement there are many different offices that are, you know, some of them are older than others, and from what Premananda Prabhu is saying, there are many that are getting off the ground there in Naperville as well. So, well, I don't have a list of resources to give you. What I can tell you, for some things, it's useful to reach out to the larger community around you that's not Iscon. For example, I'm a big fan of becoming a member of an emergency network. You know, God forbid that there should be some emergency in the temple community and you need emergency medical assistance or whatever, or you need someone to deal with abuse of some kind that happens. You know, there are public agencies, there are official agencies set up by local and state governments that are very useful. You know, school systems have excellent resources, and it may be that by making some inquiries into the local school systems about what are the resources they use, you'll find that there are agencies that could be of service to the Naperville temple community as well. So it doesn't always have to be exclusively from within Iscon. You can reach out and you'll find other agencies that are, some of them are extraordinarily effective. So I would encourage that as well.
Yes.
Prabhu, I just wanted to say one more thing, that as soon as this code of ethical behavior was published, I have ordered about 30 copies, gave one to Mohan Leela Prabhu, but my intention was to distribute this to the leadership here in the Iscon, and we have about 21 different departments right now. So my intention was to give one of these to each team, and I mean, they can, of course, the book on the website also. I just wanted to bring their attention to the website, and once the teams are formed, and just like what you said, that even though this code of ethical behavior was put together, you know, it is also in the beginning stages of adding resources and things like that. We are also in a similar stage in one sense, that we were a very small temple and it is becoming bigger. And so I think since most of the leadership position people are here, I just thought I will just let them know I have this book, and it was meant, I intended to give it to everybody. So those who are interested can come and reach out to me. I will distribute this.
Thank you. Thank you for doing it. Thank you for thinking to do that. I see Amrita Kali's hand.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you so much. It's always very nice to hear from you.
Thank you.
Prabhu, you have been mentioning this, your experience when you have started with the devotees, that you want those, that kind of devotees in your life. You want to be part of that. So I just wanted to ask, I'm sure you have seen so much of this ups and downs in your half a decade. So I'm sure that won't be the same experience after 5 years or 10 years, probably because of our familiarity. Also because when we are starting, the devotees shower so much love and extending themselves beyond their, whatever we need to really get started. And then I understand we're expected to grow and then, in turn start extending ourselves to further the mission. So I'm asking this from both the perspectives, having been received so much and gone through few years and now feel like, okay, I don't really have any support. To the other side, when I'm extending to newcomers, how do I make sure to continue to give that kind of a care?
Well, you've put you've put your finger on one of the biggest challenges in the entire project of becoming Krishna conscious, namely transitioning from a young devotee to a senior devotee. If you feel that way, imagine how many other people feel the same way. And do they not also have the right to the kind of association and guidance and friendship that you yourself would also like to have? So it reaches a point where we become the senior devotees. We become the ones who are the good sangha for the others. And that sounds like it's asking a lot, especially, if we're feeling that we need something so much for ourselves. And yet my experience has been that the quickest way to get out of, if I'm feeling bad, I'm feeling lonely, I'm feeling sorry for myself, I'm feeling, whatever I'm feeling. Sometimes the thing that works best for me, and a lot of my friends also, is to look around and see, who can I serve? If there's someone, I'll give you a practical example. A habit that I've developed over the last few years is picking up the phone and just calling God sisters and God brothers. Not because I have something I want from them, or I have to ask them something, or there's some business we have to talk about, just as a friend, just to call and say, I just wanted you to know I was thinking about you. How are you doing? How's your family? You'd be surprised how appreciative people are. Oh, it's such a great gift, People often are sad because they think nobody cares for me. If I died, no one would care. And that's a terrible feeling. But each of us has the ability and the power to change that with a simple phone call. Just to say, I don't have any service that I have to discuss with you, but I've been thinking about you, and I just wanted to see how you're doing and what's going on. Be a friend, and that's really what it was in London. They just made me feel like they were my friends. And that's how Prabhupada made us feel too. To be quite candid with you, when I was with Prabhupada, I said to myself, this is my spiritual master, but this is my best friend. This This is someone who will never hurt me. This is someone who's always thinking about me. And he was. During the last few months of his life in Vrindavan, he sent me a letter. I mean, who am I? I'm nothing. But, you know, he had Tamal Krishna send me a letter saying that Srila Prabhupada was thinking about you and asking how you're doing and what your service is these days. These were the last months of his life. Who does that? you know. I wasn't some big devotee. I wasn't some GBC sannyasi, blah blah blah. So it means a lot. It means a lot if you reach out to someone. That's the best answer I can give you.
So powerful and heart-touching. Thank you so much.
Hey Krishna, Prabhu. This is Premananda again. I was going through this book and I have a question regarding this domestic violence. It says here that if one observes domestic violence is happening in a devotee family, or anywhere, maybe it could even happen in an extended congregation. So what is the course of action one should undertake? Because I was in child protection team for quite a few years when we didn't have Naperville Center at that time. It was Iscon Chicago. And child abuse, it was like nothing to think about. Immediately you go to child protection office. Even if we see something very, even if it is a suspicious behavior. But this domestic abuse is something like, even if somebody may know something may not be right, I think there will be a lot of hesitation. If you come forward also, it is a little difficult. If you don't come forward, it's more difficult. So what do you do with this observing domestic violence? Somebody may even question, how dare you say that there is domestic violence? Even the party concerned may say that. Who to go to in that case? Should we even go?
From what you're telling me, it sounds like you've already anticipated a lot of these things and you've taken the steps to set up the committees to deal with different aspects of the needs of the community there. But it's good to have at least one person who is trained at a domestic abuse center to recognize what are the symptoms. Not everyone can recognize the symptoms. And the same is true, for that matter, to be trained about emergency services. Usually in a community, there are volunteers who accept to get the proper training to know how to handle these things. Yes, there's a stigma around it. You're quite right. And very often it's the sin that dares not say its name, But we have to get over that. If we really care for one another, then we're going to make sure that if somebody's in trouble, that they have some recourse. It has to be made available. And unfortunately, again, because somebody's wearing kurta and beads doesn't make them a pure devotee. And we open our doors to the public and we don't always know what's going on. So somebody should have the proper training to be able to identify the symptoms of child abuse, child neglect, domestic abuse, and so on, so that because very often the victims of these things don't know what to do. Unfortunately, I've known too many people. They said, "Oh well, my husband abuses me, but Krishna must want me to be here, and this is for my purification." I mean, the most crazy kinds of reactions that people have. And again, it's not philosophical. It's usually something that stems from childhood. It's a behavior pattern that is a displacement from something that has occurred earlier in life, and it requires professional intervention. So along with the other committees that you're so wonderfully organizing, it might be also a good idea that there be one person at least who takes proper training from whatever the local. I know here on Long Island, for example, I took training. It's called the Safe House on Long Island, where I was given training on what are the symptoms and when abuse is happening. If a child is not doing well in school, if a child is morose, a child is not eating, there are different symptoms that you can learn, and similarly for adults. So you're asking about a very complicated question, of course, and I'm trying to give some kind of practical answer for you. But I think since we've come to the end of our time together here, I think the conclusion that I'd like to leave you all with, and I thank you all so very much for taking time out of your evening that we could all be together like this, is to recognize that we're embarked collectively on this magnificent journey back to Krishna, back to Godhead. It is the highest privilege imaginable for any human being. Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschit jadati siddhaye. It's so rare to be that someone is given an opportunity to become a Krishna devotee. Don't neglect to also be a good human being. I think that was a big mistake we made in my generation, is that we were so preoccupied with being big devotees that we forgot how to be thinking, feeling human beings sometimes. If you want to know how to make progress with your spiritual life, work on character development. Work on being a good friend. Work on being a good parent. Work on being a good partner. Work on being a good neighbor, a good community member. You will never regret working on that level, and you will see how much miraculous spiritual progress you can make on other levels simultaneously. So I thank you for this time together.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so very much.
I
Really
hope we'll have the
appreciate-
chance again sometime.
I hope so too. Maybe when we open the temple, I'm extending our warm invitation to you on behalf of the entire community. We look forward to hearing from you again. We look forward to seeing you in person. Hopefully, everything, COVID and all will go away, and we really look forward for your association. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you, everybody.
Hare Krishna.
Haribol.
Hare Krishna.